MCP will revolutionize AI, transforming chatbots into all-knowing oracles. Or at least that's what people are claiming. We wanted to get to the bottom of whether this is just another hype cycle or if MCP is legit. So Model Context Protocol from Anthropic is making waves again, and we wanted to get into it. This is a tool use deep dive on MCP.
Today we're talking with Jason Kneen. We had an awesome chat with him back on episode 7, and we're pumped to have him back. You want to start off by maybe just like explaining what MCP means and like kind of why someone should know about it?
Yeah, so basically MCP is a open source protocol by Anthropic. They released it around December, I think, or November. It was something like that towards the end of last year. Basically stands for Model Context Protocol. And what it's about is trying to come up with a method for models to communicate with each other and functions, consistently, so that there's less configuration that developers have to do to get models to talk to APIs or talk to functions. So if you're familiar with function calling or tool calling with Claude or with OpenAI, it's very similar. It's pretty much the same, but it's just establishing a standard. And the key things with MCP is it's not there's an SDK and everything, but it's not really a replacement for anything. It's just an additional layer you can put in that uses standard communication methods, HTTP, HTTPS, SSE sockets, STDIO. There's all these different things that you can use that have been around for years. So all this is doing is bringing them together. But the protocol part of it is saying, here's some standard endpoints that we're going to have where a model can connect to the function, or a function can connect, MCP can connect to another MCP. They're going to know about what the tools list what the resources list are, the prompts and things like that. All these different features which we can go into of an MCP. So the key difference with MCPs is it's giving you this consistency of the interface. So you know exactly what you're getting from another MCP server. More importantly, though, MCP servers can talk to each other because they can self-discover their tools and their resources, and the resources, the prompting, the routes, all the different sections of the sort of base MCP sort of schema allow them both to self-discover, and because they're usually natural language driven, they can work out what they do. So there's literally no, JSON files, YAML files, configuration. You can put two MCPs together that have never spoken, and they can communicate, or a whole chain, and it will work out what the model will work out what it needs to do with each one. And the most confusing thing about MCP is they call them servers. So one thing that this does is make people panic because they think they're setting up hundreds of servers, web servers on their machine. They think they're doing it in the cloud. And so they're sending all their keys up and, what's happening to all my data and everything else. Effectively, an MCP server is supposed to be originally, if you remember Computer Control, which Anthropic released, that was an MCP. And it basically is a local server. It's a bit like serverless and servers. It's like serverless has got servers. What's that about? So it's really, the same person named it basically. So you've got a local that effectively is called usually using piping, STDIO. And so it just calls it and it runs something and it returns something. And it's really, really simple. SSE is another aspect that you can do, which goes over HTTPS and WebSockets effectively, which allows you to subscribe to an MCP. So it can broadcast events. So you can have event-driven stuff being fired. You can find the status of a job that's going and things like that. So you have the MCP servers. This is where it gets really weird. MCP servers are these little applets, let's call them. Then you have the MCP client. So the client is something like Klein. With Windsurf and Cursor, they're kind of the same thing, but effectively Klein, RuCline, Copilot to some extent are clients. And then they run inside hosts, and the hosts are VS Code. Cursor's a host and a client. So it's kind of like that sort of approach. So if you think about like my setup, I've got Klein, RuCline, Copilot. So I'm sort of running VS Code as my host. And then I've got all these clients, and then they're communicating with the servers. But also servers can be clients as well as servers and communicate with each other. But the majority of the time, all this happens on your machine. It doesn't need to go anywhere else. It's just like you having a local little web app or a local tool you're calling, a little API. When it starts getting more interesting is when you want to do the kind of thing that I'm doing, which I'm kind of doing locally to start with. The biggest problem with MCPs is managing them, because there's so many. I've got three MCPs here: memory, prompt master, notification server. Not the greatest names, the last two, because they were mine. So memory is it's like a rag graph memory that's available that I downloaded through Klein because they've got a nice little marketplace of some sort of curated ones. Installs it really simply, just goes in. Prompt master is just something I knocked up to test, and it's basically creates a prompt. You give it an instruction, creates a nice prompt, it saves it, you can get another prompt back. And then notification server is to send out notifications, broadcast events and things like that. So those tools, those servers have tools. So I'm not sure if hopefully you can see this, but you've got create entries, create relations. So these are all the methods, effectively, all the tools that could be called in the memory MCP. Its type is process, which means it's STDIO. Just keep wanting to sing the disco, STDIO whenever I say that. But yeah, it's STDIO. The command, you can barely see that actually. I need to improve that. But the raw command is npx-y, and then it's got like the component name, the package name, and a little parameter afterwards. So it's running a command line sort of call, which is like a piping call. It's an stdio call. And then the stuff down here is for Copilot, which I'll come back to. So this is your standard MCP stuff. And then in schemas, I sort of break that down to actually give you the schemas. And this is really for devs to go through and understand everything in terms of the parameters. But it's basically what the parameters are for each of these methods, effectively. You can have as many methods as you like, as many tools as you like, but you can see what the problem is. So if I go into the prompting tool, we've got 3. If I go into notification, we've got 2. You start to see that as you add more and more MCPs, you've effectively got lots of tooling. The big problem now is that people can install 10 MCPs because they get all excited. They go to do something in their their model in Cursor or whatever. They've added all the MCPs in, and the way it works is it will take all of the MCP definitions, so their names, their descriptions, the tools, their descriptions, any references to resources that are in there, which I'll come back to as well, and prompts, and all that goes up in the system prompt. So you can imagine you're going, do you think you can help me deploy this? And it's going, well, all these tools are going up for it to come back and go, yeah, I can help you. I can guide you through that. And you're like, okay, cool. You don't realize you just burnt it's like 30 cents or something, but you just burnt money for no reason, and performance, and you've used your context up and everything. So what I've done here, well, I'll come back to what I've done because let's focus on some other bits in here. So I haven't fleshed this out fully, but I'll show you in Klein. If we go into Klein, they've got their little section up here for MCPs. You've got Marketplace, and you can see they've got all these different MCP servers. And basically, they all just do different tasks. They have tooling in them that does different things. So the sleep tool is really funny because literally it just sleeps. So it's like a pause. You can just have it in a workflow to say, can you do this? Then wait 5 seconds, then do this. If there was maybe an asynchronous task or something you were running, or an asynchronous MCU. You've got email sending, you've got Git, which is a classic one, Shopify, Stripe have got a really good one. Discord, if you wanted to integrate with Discord so that every builds you do and things like that will fire that off. Your Google Calendar, Markdownify. Now, one of the things that crops up here, Task Manager, one of the things that crops up here is people thinking, well, hold on a minute, why would Stripe be in here when I'm coding? Why would I need Stripe as an MCP to interface with when I'm coding? How does that work when I'm deploying my website and everything? Well, MCPs are effectively APIs. So you can have it as part of your deployment, that it's going to deploy that MCP that will now run locally on the server. Or the MCPs can come with the documentation you need to actually code it for you. So they can actually be almost like a little guidebook, like a little interactive guidebook that will actually help you do your testing and everything, but then give you like the documentation and the example code of how to use it in production.
Just using the examples we see on the screen. So
yeah,
even though they're not necessarily code related, the Spotify is an example. If I was just in a mood where every time I pushed a commit, a certain song would come on,
Bingo.
Would MCP allow that connection to happen?
Yep.
Okay.
It's really cool. And the thing is, what's really cool about it is, the interaction of these things is there's no human involvement. I mean, I could say something like, could you fetch something? Could you go to my Google Calendar? I've got a meeting coming up. Could you go into my Google Calendar, look up the next meeting I've got coming up, then use the the search tool to search for something relating to that meeting, download that content, Discord, and play something, play a big, fanfare or something, whatever. You can just link all these together. And when you do that, the model will work out what it needs to do because it would have already known about all the tools. And because they discover each other, it can go, right, what does that one do? What does that one do? Right, that goes together like this. That inputs that, outputs that. Therefore, I can make this sequence work. And so without saying anything about all the detail in between and having never used those tools, the model for the first time can do like a zero-shot workflow. And it's quite amazing when it works because it just goes through and does it. I had an MCP wrapper that could take any API that it finds on my network and wrap it in a MCP, basically make it an MCP instantly. So it ran a network tool that scanned my network. It looked for all the devices and found anything it could identify, like Android and I think Alexa's come up as Android and things like that. But it found the Nanoleaf, so it found the Nanoleaf controller, got the IP address. Then it was instructed once it found the controller or of something, and it could identify it, to look up on GitHub to see if it could find an SDK. If it gets an SDK, it needs to download it. So clone it, build it, test it, make sure it runs. If it runs, it could use E2B or something like that to do that. You can do like a sandbox. So you can have that as an MCP, or you could spin up a Docker, And if it gets it running, then it's to ask me for a key. I'll get the key, and then it's to wrap that as an MCP so that I can then use it. And then the next thing you can do after that happens is go turn the lights off, and the lights go off because it can now control the lights. That's the craziness of it. So for anybody that's got like legacy systems, it's incredible because you can link all these things together. If you've got one of these home controller things, I can't remember what it's called now, the home kit or home control, the sort of home managers, and they've got APIs, you can now link all those together. You get an error when you build, it can fire an MCP that makes your lights go red or something, it goes red behind your screen, or it lights up green, so it's done. You can do incredible things. But really, that's what it is. It's linking tools together and linking models together. The big issue is this content, this amount of MCPs there are. And you could easily end up with, a friend of mine was showing me earlier, he had like literally 150 tools that were coming up. That's a lot of content that has to go up. So that's a problem. There's some services out there, MCPX, MCP.run. MCP.run is a sort of, it's not curated even. They search for GitHub repos and things that have got MCP servers. They list them. The author can claim them to sort of verify them. And then you can effectively install them via their tool, which runs as an MCP. So you add one MCP into your system, and you can ask that MCP to find you something, and it will then find it and install it in your account, like remotely. And that's available to use locally. So it's like you kind of building up. It's like having Visual Studio extensions in the cloud, and having one thing that you can say, can you find me extensions that do this, 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 and this? And it just goes off, adds them to your account. They deploy. You've got them. That's it. And you can use them in any VS Code instance that supports that. That's effectively what they are. The other aspect of them are, so you've got tooling. So the simplest way to think about tooling is function calls. It's the classic function call tooling. Then you've got resources. Resources is effectively text. So it could be documentation, could be readmes, could be example code, could be any amount of documents could be in resources. It's a knowledge base that goes with that MCP. And then you've got prompts. Prompts allow you to do things like give examples of how to use the MCP. And it could have variable names in there. So it could be dynamic. And if the clients support it, which that some of them they're not yet, some of them are planning to, and a lot of them are open source, so you can add it yourself. They're going to support, that supports the / command. So if you do, you'll see it in Copilot when I show you this, but in Copilot, you do to get the server, and you do a / to get the tool in the server. And so the idea is you'd be able to say, if it was like, I want to build a mobile app, and the prompt, you might have this MCP that's a completely packaged mobile app builder. Everything is in there. All the resources, everything is in there. And the example prompt could be build or plan. So you do /plan, and then what you want to do. You just say it, and it builds the prompt around that because it's got the prompt template. You can chain prompts together. So if you can chain prompts together and chain tools together in those template prompts, you have what I think is an agentic workflow tool. You can now make MCP into agents. MCPs are agents, and you can now make them work together based on prompts. So they can change how they behave based on who they're talking to and what they're doing. So it's really, really powerful.
I think one of the issues that I've had with MCP, I was playing with MCP like months ago, long time ago, because it's been out for a little while now. And I set up a little linear tool so that I could hook up to my linear and like make issues and edit issues. And I was using Claude Desktop, and I think it's come a long way from there. But I would notice that if I have that MCP turned on, it almost biases it towards using that MCP sometimes. And so like I'll ask it something that's not at all related to task management. It's like, okay, here, I'll make you a task for that. I'm like, no, wait, I'm just like asking you for a tweet or something, you know? So I think it feels kind of like an issue, but.
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of the similar issue that you get with Siri and with the Doofus black device that I won't say the name of, although I've probably just ruined it for Siri users. It just gets the wrong end of the stick. You know, you'll say, "Can you turn the living room lights on?" Turning all the lights on? No. You know, it's like, so yes, it can be like that. But you can put prompts in there. You can put rules in there inside the MCP itself. A lot of people are just touching the surface of it at the moment. They're just filling tools up and going, look, it runs tools. They're not realizing that there's all this richness underneath where you can actually put guidelines, you know, like Klein rules and all these cursor rules. You can have rules inside the MCP that says, you know, this is what you need to refer to in how to interact. And so you can be very, very specific. You can have code in the MCP because it's an API to confirm functions that might be disruptive or might be something that you don't, you know, you want to verify. And most of these apps have got like allow always, you know, whitelisted kind of functionality and things like that too. But yes, you got to be careful. So I haven't had to rename it, but I've kind of renamed. It is called Studio, the Visual Code, but I had a weird situation earlier where I had my CLI is called I've got to get this right, MCPSX, and it's long-winded, but MCPSX. So it had a command originally called STDIO to set up a server. So you just ran those two things and it set up all your MCPs. The tool on the VS Code is called MCP Studio. So you see where this is going. So I start going, can you use MCP, you know, can you do the memory tool for MCP Studio? And it's going and trying running things directly because it's thinking it's doing that whole, I'm going to be really clever and go, that's what he means. He always misspells. Studio, he means STDIO. So I've had to change that now. So it's MCP SX, and then run is the command. And that runs a default STD. And then hopefully it's not confusing. But yes, that is potentially an issue. And also the issue of people naming them. You know, if you've got a memory tool and it's called, sequential memory and parallel memory, and you've got this confusion then. So and this is where there's this problem, right? So when I was trying to set up my MCPs, I was going through this whole thing of like, there's so many potential things you can put together. And really all these clients support a basic flat list of servers. What MCP Run does is something similar to what I'm doing, which is they can list all of those tools underneath one MCP. So it kind of brings them all in, names them as a server and a tool. And so under one MCP, you get all the tools. But the problem is you still get all the tools. So you're still getting, for everything you do, all of those tools available. They're in one place, great, but there's hundreds of them now, and they're longer names because they've got the server name and the tool name. So what I thought was, would it be interesting to have something where you could actually create groups of tools? You could create virtual MCPs that are like groups, and you can group servers together, you can group tools together, and so you can create logically named MCPs that have tools from all these different servers. So it could be like the memory tool has the memory server has loads of tools. Really, all you need is recall memory and recorder memory. That's it. It's got loads of little granular tools inside it, but you don't need to access that all the time. So you might just bring those two entries in, or you might just, because it can call itself regardless of the MCP itself can call regardless of what you say, if you just sort of infer it. So I can just say write a memory and it will just do it because it knows the tool's there, even though I haven't seen it. Now you can turn off things and ignore them and block them, but that's another thing. So the idea was to try and group things together. So basically I can sort of take all these tools that are here and I can install them in what effectively is, this is the VS Code extension. It's not completely up to speed yet with the CLI. It's almost there, but basically let me show you the CLI first. So it's called MCP SX, which is a bit of a mouthful, but you can just do MCPs, I think, as well. Yeah. So the idea is if I do MCPS run, or let's do the actual command. Well, this is going to fail on me now, isn't it? There we go. So that's now effectively fired up the MCP, my MCP service. It's fired up my main host server or my main server, and it's linking to all these other ones. You can see the memory one coming in, the prompt masters coming in, notification servers coming in. So it's connecting to those 3 clients that we see there. And now those tools are accessible, which means if I go into Klein and I go into the installed MCPs, you can see, oops, just changed something in here because I forgot to change that earlier. There we go. So now I've got an MCP that I called tooling. I called it that just because I thought if I call it something that like makes sense, it's not some, MCPSX sort of thing. It's going to be like, use the tooling, use your tooling, use your tools, So you expand that, and then this is all the standard client interface. And so they've got all of the different commands. Now, there's only 2 showing here. And the reason there's 2 showing is because with this tool that I've done, I can now do in my configuration these commands. Don't know why my insider's VS Code does this, by the way. It's doing like a weird, freaky resizing thing. I don't know what that is. But you can see here. So typically with an MCP, if I show you, let me show you a regular one. Let me bring configuration. Config. Okay, so typically, you can't see that at the moment, but I'm just going to get it into the other screen. Away. Okay, new file. Okay, so this is my configuration, and this is kind of the usual configuration you'd see for a normal thing like Klein or Claude, something like that, cursor. You have, forget the ID, that's my sort of add-in. So we've got name, and then the command. And the commands will usually be something like npx. The -y is to say that you want to install that package if you haven't got it installed. So this is not running remotely. This is doing an install and then running locally. So that's one of the key things to remember here. And because one of the things you can do is you can send parameters afterwards. And some of the parameters might be key, your API key or something. And people panic because they think, well, I'm doing an npx of a remote package sending my key. That's not good. But you're not. You're doing the npx install first, and then it's running the local package with your key locally. So it's exactly the same as if you were just running a normal locally with a key in. Let's just stop doing that. So that's a process type. So that's stdio. If that was SSE, then that would be SSE written there. And the command would be actually a URL that would be like HTTPS. It's going to a server that's going to have an endpoint, which is sockets, basically. You can put in your keys that, don't look at my key. That's only the first bit of my key. And for Copilot, we've got this additional stuff, which is the chat participants, because you need to have a chat participant within Copilot to be able to communicate with it. It's just the way it works. It's a bit strange. But I'll come back to all that stuff. So your normal configuration would be something like this. You'd have hundreds of these things all set up. So what you do in this system now is I've got it set up so that I have MCP servers. That's a standard Klein sort of entry point. My description tooling, it could be anything. They haven't done arrays here. They've done like a sort of properties-based system. My command is just MCPSX, just the CLI name. And then the arguments is run. Arguments are run. And this is where you see why it's doing what it's doing over here, is because I've got these extra commands that I can put in where I can say I only want those 2 tools. I can say that I want specific servers. So I can say I want, my names will be wrong, but I could say I want memory prompt, and I could say that I want specific tools from specific servers. So if I said, if I didn't say any servers, but I said tools, I could cherry pick from all the different servers. And that lets me group those within that entry there. So it means I can basically take this and I can copy it. I can create another entry called, let's say, backend, save that. And then hopefully, if I refresh this, there we go. So we've now got two MCPs called backend and tooling. They've both got the same things. But again, I could just remove things here, take that whole line out. And that should just update in a second. That's just client updating. There we go. So we've got all our tooling again. So you've got this capability with this kind of approach of saving a hell of a lot of tokens and a hell of a lot of time, because now I can basically say, well, this is a simple ask question I'm doing. I'm just asking for something. I'm asking to spec something. So I'm just going to include the sort of spec tooling. It's only going to be document writing, mermaid charts, because everyone loves those now at the moment, or maybe did, but it's a big thing now. And the models love it, mermaid charts. If you can get them to do mermaid charts, it's brilliant. You get really, really good responses. So I can basically create these really friendly, collections of tools. I could have a server that effectively is a tool. It's just got one in there if I wanted to even. You can just do all these amazing things. You could create an MCP that adds code, does a load of tooling inside it, and then exposes that as like a whole workflow if you wanted to do that as well. So there's all kinds of amazing things you can do with it. And one of the things as well you can do is ignore. You can actually ignore tools. So I can say I want everything but this one. So it means you're really optimizing what you're doing when the prompts when the prompts are asking for the relevant tooling. The other aspect of this, which is not in there yet, but it's coming. I'm trying to release this today, the CLI at least, and hopefully the extension. The next thing I'm doing, which will probably be by the end of the week, is adding AI in. So adding an AI in will allow it to actually dynamically feed the tools based on the prompt. So for the first time with an MCP setup, every time you prompt, you can have different tooling recommended. And my code name for it is Q, because it's like James Bond. He's tooling up the agents, so it's going to be called Quartermaster Technology or something like that, some silly name. But basically the Quartermaster is like the guy that's in John Wick when he goes around and says, I need a jacket tactical. He's that guy that sets them all up. And so the task will come in and you're asking a simple question. Well, you don't need any tools. You might need, if it's a question about some documentation that we've got tooling and resources on, okay, that might get included in that. But you can literally have your tooling grouped into sort of ask, code, plan, architect, test. You can have one testing MCP with all of those testing MCPs underneath that's doing all your test plans. So you can do some really clever grouping. And then when the code extension supports that, you'll basically be able to see all your groups in here. I'm adding in workflows. So I'm going to do the ability to actually connect them together using nodes. So each MCP will be a node. You'll be able to sort of expand this out. You'll see a little flow diagram. You'll be able to drop an MCP in, link it to another one. And I'm going to add MCPs in that are the operators, which sounds really bizarre because it's like, but basically I'm going to have an or MCP. Well, I'm not going to have an or MCP and an and MCP. I'm going to have one MCP called operators. And inside that will be and, or, XOR, split, parallel, all these different options that you can then use as sort of tools that you can then fit in between that flow. So in theory, I should be able to build a node visual workflow of an agentic workflow of MCP tooling for different MCP tools across different servers that I've included, save that, not as some JSON file that's like a thing that only works within the system. It will save that as a prompt. So it will be like, use this tool, then run these tools, then, so you can take that prompt out and paste it into anything you want it to. It doesn't have to run this, this is not a closed wall system that I'm locking you into using. I'm trying to use the MCPs as like Lego bricks. That's the way I think about them.
Here's a question for potential workflow that I'm curious about. If using MCP Studio, I have my MCP server set up for my development workflow,
Mhm.
and then I created one. How did you refer to it? Was it like an orchestrated group or like your server of servers?
That's yeah. I was thinking about this the other day. We need a collective noun, isn't it?
Yeah, but I could have one of those
Origi-
for
yeah,
one of those for development, another one for staging, so they could have
yeah,
like say a SQLite locally, and then something that replicates
exactly,
the product.
exactly.
Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Now, natural language wise, you do have this issue sometimes where if you're very vague, like I said in MCP Studio and it thought it was STDO. So you have to you have to think about that. But we've got structured outputs. We've got all that capability to have prompts be verified, and we've got the ability through something like this that you can do yourself with an MCP of saying, I'm going to act as the sort of intermediary to all the tooling. So you could have an MCP that you go to first. This is irrespective of what I've done. This is what you can just do now with MCPs. You could say, go to the tooling MCP. The tooling MCP can now go, right, hold on a minute. What does he mean? You said you want to do this, this, and this. Right. So do you want to do this? Do you want me to use these tools? And then it can confirm and you can go, yes. And then bang, it goes off and uses those tools and does the job. And that means, you're making sure the human is in the middle kind of thing. You can even create a human MCP. You can actually, Klein Rue have done a new provider recently. I haven't tried it yet, but it's called Human. So you have OpenAI, Anthropic, Human. And so in one of your configs, you can have a human and it's designed for coming back to me as the user to go, I'm waiting for the next bit of code you're going to give me. Oh yeah, right. I'm going to go and ChatGPT, ask that, and then, paste it in sort of thing. So it's kind of like supporting that kind of usage. But you could have an MCP that's a human MCP. So effectively it stops as soon as it hits that MCP, it now stops and waits for the human to respond and then continues, or, ask the human a question. I've done once called like Observer, which is like a senior dev. So it kind of critiques the plan by the model and says, well, you shouldn't be doing that. You can do MCPs that do chain of thought. You can download some of those. There's a whole article that came out recently about chain of thought, monitoring LMs using chain of thought processing because it's really, really quite funny because, they can sometimes be inaccurate and make up stuff and not do things and give you incomplete results. It's like, wow, yes, that's exactly what they do. So, you can have an MCP that's verifying everything that comes back to say, whoa, this is what was supposed to be done. This is what you did. That's not right. Do it again. So you can have these gatekeepers. So it's really, really powerful. But equally, it could be, you've got to be careful with it. Security is a big thing. Security is coming. They're going to be doing their own security kind of protocols, which are going to be standard stuff. But the thing is, you can implement security now. It's no different than having an API. So an API key, secret tokens, all that sort of stuff. But you do have to be careful. I mean, that I've let people know, but I've come across at least 3 sites or 3 apps online that have their OpenAI keys in the source code. And that's nothing to do with MCPs. That's to do with people using these no coding tools and not realizing that they need to use something like Vite or Next or something to not be running in the browser. One of them I found was that the entire app is in the browser. Their entire React code for the whole thing. There's nothing that goes, everything is saved in local storage. Everything is there. You can just literally pull the whole thing out. So the danger with these is it's a bit like word macros or anything like that. It's like any app that you download. Now, when I use an MCP, especially in Copilot, it will actually pop up in code to say, do you give permission to use this? Do you allow this? And you go, yes. Clients should all be doing that. They should all be saying, do you want to allow this? Most of them do, but you can bypass it. The client itself could be written in such a way that it's a devious client. It's been designed to be put in the stores to say, I can run MCPs and do really cool stuff, and it doesn't ask for permission when it runs. That MCP could run if you don't check it, and it could be doing anything. It could have now permission to browse your drive and do things. You've got to treat it like any executable that you might download, basically.
Is there a way to audit MCP servers? Like, is it just a config file, or like how deep do you have to explore to look for this potential malicious behavior?
It's a flat file usually, like the kind of thing I've shown you already, where you just have all your MCPs listed. For the online services, it's more difficult because you don't know what the MCPs are doing. You have no visibility. You're trusting the fact that the online service, like MCP Run or anything like that, is actually properly checking them. I'm sure they are, but and I think that's why they have to sort of claim your MCP so you can certify it. Otherwise, you can't install it. You can still go off to GitHub and do it, but they're not going to take responsibility through their site, which is great. But yeah, I mean, one of the tools that I suspect will come out soon, I might be adding it to this actually, is just a little scanner. It's a bit weird though, because it's like download my MCP to then scan other MCPs to see if they're safe. And it's like, well, how do I know yours is safe? So, so that'll be I'll probably do something, but that'll be open source so that everybody can see how it works. But essentially it's going to be looking for, what packages are being installed, what permissions are being asked for, and where is it storing stuff? Where is it putting config files and things like that? So yes, people have got to be careful. I mean, it's like any website that says, download this, click this, press this. There's potentially room for abuse that would end up giving it a bad name unfairly, I think, because it's as susceptible as any website. It's just because it's so accessible. It's like a VS Code extension. I can do a VS Code extension and put it in the marketplace without any certification. Yes, I can create a publisher, and I can, but there's no like SSL or no SSH. There's no, there's one key, like a personal access token that I've generated, but which proves that it's my account. Yeah, okay, but there's nothing else. It's not like sort of iOS's convoluted process of provisioning profiles and everything else, or what do they call it? The notary stuff that macOS has done, so you can download externally, but it's notarized. That might become a thing. Maybe that's going to become a thing with these kind of tools, especially with the new one that was announced this week, Agency, I think it was called, the Cisco partnership with Langflow. They've come up with ACP, which is their format, very corporate-y, more secure, more security stuff in there, but similar principle, similar discovery principle. But yeah, people have got to be careful. The danger is at the moment that they're going to just go and randomly start installing a load of things. So you do have to just keep an eye on what you're installing and what it's going to be doing on your machine and stuff.
It's a great time to be a cybersecurity expert now, huh?
Oh, definitely. I've already got there's somebody I'm potentially doing a blog post with. We're going to kind of do good cop, bad cop type blog post about what could be done, and do some little tests and things and just see what could happen, because you do have to be careful, especially the proxies. Especially, I'm not doing anything at the moment that's not online. All my stuff is local, so you've got all your stuff installed locally. It can't go, and you can see it all. I'm not doing, and if I do anything remote, I think it will be more like you can put your own MCPs into it, so you're in control. You don't pick it from my list, kind of thing. You sort of pick it from ones that have been used by other people or certified, but I'm not ready to do anything like that yet. But that's the thing that's going to be popping up. It's already happening now. There's quite a few directory services for MCPs, because the money isn't in the MCPs themselves, because most of them are open source. And you can pretty much create them yourself anyway. It's a bit like the no coding tools. If you go into Klein have actually published their prompt that they use. So when people go, oh, MCPs are so complicated compared to normal things, I'd much rather do my YAMLs and my schemas and stuff. You can literally just go into Klein and say, create a new tool that lets me do Stripe payments. And it will go and write you a tool that does Stripe payments, and it will install it, and then you can run it and it will work. It's literally insane. The ones that I've written, I wrote the MCP wrapper was written by Klein. So it wraps something in an MCP, it installed it. And then when I say, can you wrap something? The MCP wrapper kicks in and then wraps that thing and then gives it back. And it's just like, what? Or you can have them. I had one that reserved itself as a Docker container. So it ran as a normal MCP. And then I said, I want to run in Docker. So it went, okay. Then it respins itself up inside Docker or inside a web container. And because they're web apps effectively, or they're apps, you can do things like serve a web page. So you can actually have a chat interface for all of your MCPs. So you can chat to them. So, you can actually talk to it and ask it what it does. And that sort of brings me on to the other stuff with the, one of the things that a lot of the tools don't support yet, the clients don't support yet, is this thing called sampling. And it's mainly because not all of I think Anthropic do support it. Sampling is like the MCP using the host model. So like for the thing I was talking to you, I'm going to do with the intelligent sort of routing and everything tooling, I'm going to need a model. I'm going to need something inside my MCP to go, right, let's have a look at this prompts and see what I can do with it. Now, I can choose to do that by asking the user to give a key, and I'll use Anthropic or I'll use OpenAI, whatever they want to use. But with sampling, what you can do is the MPC itself, the MCP, I've just got MPCs. The MCP is a terrible name. MCPs can go to the Claude tool, the Claude model that's calling it, and they can go, would you mind running this for me? And they can give it like a little package of a prompt and everything and give it back to Claude. Claude can check it, go, yes, it's valid based on my schema for accepting this. There's nothing dodgy in it. It's going to now call that function for me, for the MCP. So it goes off, gets the result, gives it back to the MCP. So in all intents and purposes, the MCP has done a model connection, but without having to have any of its own model configuration in there. It's still using the main model. So that means you can have these MCPs doing lots of intelligent stuff, because now you could have a swarm of them go out and actually talk to each other. I've had one where I have a live kit capability. The MCP itself has a live kit capability. You can spawn multiple versions of the MCP. Between them, one of them can decide it's going to host a meeting, and the others can jump in as agents and start chatting to each other. And you can join the meeting using the sort of live kit demos for the meeting room. It's crazy. So there's all kinds of really cool stuff like that. I've just realized I haven't shown the Copilot stuff. Let me show you the Copilot stuff. So Copilot's interesting because Copilot doesn't work like a normal chat interface just because of Microsoft and everything else. So they have this whole concept of a participant. So the way it works with Copilot is I have an extension effectively. So my VS Code. So with Klein, it's fine because you can just link into the tooling that I've done. To work with Copilot, you have to actually use something like this extension. And what this does is it actually installs. You can still see my screen, can't you? Yeah. It installs all these other MCP tools. So you can see here, I need to sort the icons out. Effectively, it's dynamically created these little extensions. And those are created as participants effectively to allow Copilot to interact. You don't normally need to worry about that. It just all happens in the background. But the end result of that is that when you go into here, and let's just make, I can say, and I get all of the normal commands as, and you can see here, well, I think I need to change my descriptions, they're a bit long, and I've got a rogue duplicate in there, but you can see we've got app memory, and then we've got the description of what that is. Notifications is in there, prompts is down the bottom there. So you can do at to get to the server, and so I can at the server and then ask it a question, and it will run that through the MCP. And equally, I can do these slash commands. So you can see this here with the fix, test, explain. That's the standard Copilot way of sort of interacting with Copilot. So what I can do here is basically, I do memory. You can immediately see that we've got all our tooling inside the memory server available. So I could just ask a general question, or I could do a particular tool. So let's just do this. What do you know about, never type when people are watching me. What do you know about MCP servers? Hopefully this is going to say thinking. It's used one reference, which will be the server. And now it's going to have a look. Well, I hope it's going to have it does do this sometimes. Can be a bit forgetful. I might have to rephrase it. Hold on a second. Let's try memory. Let's do search. Search for info on MCP. So it's got a little working thing there, which didn't have before, which is good. And that's now searching that knowledge graph. So there we go. So that's pulled stuff out from this is all stuff that's been basically in the knowledge graph that when I'm doing prompting now, what I do is I use this memory thing to sort of get it to record the conversation. So, can you summarize this task before we move on? And then when you go to the next task, you can recall that, and it sort of knows where it's left off, which is really good. Or I could do something like on the prompt server, I could say generate a prompt for designing and now that's going to run the prompt MCP. Oh, what's it say here? Message was cut off. Okay. It's being really picky with me. Okay. Let's try generate a prompt. Create a prompt. Create prompt. No, sorry. Yeah, that's right. Create a prompt that can use, can create a paranoid that like a step of steps. So that's gone into the MCP, sent that prompt in. So it takes the context of what's going on. And now we've got prompt that's come back from the prompt master. And then this is the sort of model responding after it's rendering, the content from the prompt master from the MCP. So, you can do that. I could have also said, after you've done that, use this to do this and chain a whole sequence of things together. Or I could have that as a workflow command within the MCP that can then do the chaining for me. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do. This stuff could be asynchronous. I've got one that spins off tasks. So when you spin off a task, it kind of creates a little task list file in the repo and then stores where all the tasks are and the agents are off doing it and everything. So you can do some really cool stuff with it. So yeah, that's basically what I'm launching. It's the command line tool around that, and then the VS Code tool. So the idea of this will be I can just come in here, add more in, and this is where we came to earlier, where I said about Copilot stuff. So this is the chat configuration. So I can change the name of prompts to be something else. I can change some of the descriptions and things like that. We've got environment variables, which we're not going to look at again. You're going to have to change that now. I've done that too many times. And then the schemas you can go into. And the other thing I'm adding to this, which I haven't done yet, which I will do next, is testing. So I'm going to put this is when I add the AI, I'm going to put a chat interface in here. So you can actually talk to the MCP like you would talk to it and see the results that come back and just test it out and make sure that everything's working in a sort of sandboxy kind of way before you actually deploy stuff.
What's really interesting about this is you're focusing not only on developer experience, but also agent experience. When I was working at Open Interpretive, the thing that I discovered most, or the thing I learned most from that job, was like, you have to build the tools for agents. You're not treating them like programs. You have to actually kind of get into their brain and think about like, okay, well, if you were just presented this random pile of text, what would your actions be? And if like kind of what we're working on here, if you have 100 MCP servers or whatever, and that's just all in your system prompt, it would seem to me, if I was just an agent with no memory of anything and just this giant wall of text, that I must pick one of these 100 tools, And so it's like, okay, I got to go pick one of these tools. So what I really like about what you're building here is like, don't give them everything. Let's just have some sort of like a filter here of sorts to give it just the tools that it might need for this job. It's all about agent experience.
Yeah. I mean, you can actually do something here. There's actually the scope here to create an MCP of a system prompt MCP. So if you think about it, you could have a very, very simple system prompt in your system that just says, you can run MCPs, you get them from this tool, you ask it what you need, take the user's response and go through and it will give you the relevant thing. But for this one, it could be, here's a basic instruction, and then the rest of the system prompt is effectively generated from the MCP of, the system prompt MCP that takes the prompt in. So when the prompt comes in, to that initial call to the LLM, it can go, right, this is my sort of status, this is my role. I've got all this tools available. I've got specifically here a system prompt capability to expand my knowledge. This request has come in. Oh, I'm going to need some stuff here. So let's look at these tools and see what I can get. And it's going to be, this involves some reasoning. So let's use the reasoning tool. I'm going to need to use that. I'm going to need to use that. And then it can start to interact with those tools and basically change its system prompt dynamically. And then if you imagine hooking that into a memory MCP, you've now got an evolving system prompt that can be adapting. So for me, the classic one in the sessions it was working, but I needed to store this somewhere, was can you stop using the MCP SX STDIO thing, use the MCP Studio? And once I said that, it went, oh, okay, I remember that. But it only remembered it in that chat instance. And then when I did another one, it did it again. With this, it could be learning as it goes. You could have it write in Klein rules files or cursor rules files. Imagine your cursor rules file changing, adding to, changing between prompts. It's amazing, really, what you can do with it. I've got one that I'm going to release called CodeServe, which it does the same thing for code. So basically, it reduces hallucinations and tokens by about 70% by only giving the model the code it needs based on the search for the symbols it wants to do. So if you say, I've got a problem with my login screen, it will now do a search, come back with the symbols for the search that say, these are the code blocks in the code that I've already indexed. And it will say, I want that one, and that one. And then it gives it that code, and then that's the code it works with, and that's what it gives back. And then CodeServe could be like a gatekeeper as well. So if it said, oh, can I have the code for the registration page? It would be, why do you need that? You don't need that. You were asked to change the login button. You're not having that, And you prevent that whole thing of looking at your screen suddenly and thinking, what the hell are you doing? And it's like installing packages and stuff. It's like, I asked you to change the color of a button, And it's like removing half your code and stuff. So that's the idea behind that. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be the big thing now, because context windows are getting bigger. You've got 2 million contexts, 1 million contexts, and locally now you can run a 1 million context, R1 or Quen R1 model. So the danger is that people are thinking, oh, this is fantastic. I can just put all this stuff in it, which you can, but now you've got so much stuff. One of the things I found is, and I want to do an MCP for this, is cleaning up folders, cleaning up files. Because what I found is the models can do things for you and say they've done it. You go and test it and it's not done. And it's because they've done a different file that had an underscore, or it was the version 2 of that file that you did a quick copy of because you wanted to save it. So you're actually causing more confusion and hallucinations by doing that. So yeah, there's lots of stuff that can be done with these things. I'm really, it's really cool to see the take up of it. I'm really pleased that people are getting behind it. There's some people that don't like it. That's fine. It's just an API. It's just the understanding of where things go that's the problem at the moment. It's the education of it.
I'm just glad that there's the standard for it now. They're actually working towards standards and protocols to keep things consistent rather than people, piecing together their own things. It's nice to have that.
And really these agent frameworks will hopefully embrace it. A lot of them are, which means they can now be interoperable much more easily. You'll just have a sort of crew MCP and a Langflow MCP and an OpenAI agent MCP. Link them all together. That was the first issue. I actually tried to do it last night, but I had to reboot my machine and couldn't do it. Someone's already put an issue in the OpenAI agents framework to say, can we make an MCP of this? Because that's going to give you immediate agentic capability out the box. So yeah, it's really, really cool. And it works with anything. Anything. OpenAI. If I switch to OpenAI, it will still call tooling. It will still call MCPs, even though it's Anthropic. Anthropic did it. You don't have to use Claude. You can still use anything that does tooling.
Jason, this has been a blast. Thank you so much for coming on and teaching us about this.
No worries.
I really encourage people to check out when you're in a Twitter space. You have some of the best content out there. Is there anything else you'd like people to know before we let you go?
The site is up. By the time this goes out, the site is up. It is mcpsx.run. And that's where you can download the CLI and you'll be able to get access to the VS Code.
We'll have that down below for everyone as well.
Cool. Brilliant.
Yeah, thanks so much for being on, Jason. We'll get you on another time in the next
Cool.
next year, I'm sure. We'd love to have you on.
Cool. Thanks, guys.